Creed 3 is now the third entry into the Creed franchise, making it also the ninth overall entry into the Rocky franchise. This has been really an exceptional case of a movie that had a legacy, then created a spin-off series, which is
Mhm.
proven to be pretty much as equally as successful as those original films are. And the Rocky franchise, for the better part of 50 years now almost, has just been such a beloved and iconic sports franchise in film history. And now with Creed 3, we have Michael B. Jordan playing double duty. He's not only the star of this film, but he's also, for the first time ever, stepping up to direct this feature film as well, bringing in a couple of newcomers into this movie, most notably Jonathan Majors. So there was a lot to look forward to with Creed 3. There was a lot to be excited
Mhm.
about, especially considering this was going to be the first movie without the presence of Sylvester Stallone starring alongside Michael B. Jordan in this new franchise. And so with all of that out the way, man, I will pass it over to you. What did you think about Creed 3?
What a tremendous and impressive directorial debut for Michael B. Jordan. I think, this is a guy who has just always really had a name since he really appeared in Hollywood, as Ryan Coogler would tell you, with the appearance of Fruitvale Station, a movie that really put him and Ryan Coogler on the map at the time. But fast forward, they going to make the first Creed, they're going to make Black Panther, and now we finally get, I think, Michael B. Jordan somewhat on his own, in having to lead a film, and a big film at that, as in the Creed franchise. And man, I have to say, I'm proud of Michael B. Jordan as someone, again, who has just been here and watched his growth, as really, again, somebody who's been involved in movies as an actor. You've seen the things that he's been a part of, and he's always done a decent job, but I think this is a different level of, I have to commend him for doing a movie like this, for directing a movie like this, for choosing and saying this will be my first one. I think it was, in my mind, it's difficult to go from having, again, someone like Ryan Coogler to your side, where the second one, Ryan Coogler doesn't direct, right? But you still have Sylvester Stallone there. You know what I mean? And this one is like, okay, both of those parties are removed. What can I do? And I think he really shows up here in telling a story that means, even a little bit more by way of an examination of black masculinity than even possibly the first two might have done, man. And so I very, very much enjoyed Creed 3. To be fair, it's not the highest bar in the world, but it's my favorite movie of the year so far, I'd say. It's very early in the year. There's a lot, still to be seen, but I think that's dope to say it's March and Creed 3 is my favorite movie of the year so far, man. There's so many shots in this film that I really appreciate, that I love, that I can't wait to go back and watch just to see how good it looks. There's a lot of creative choices that Michael B. Jordan makes in this film that I was very surprised about, but very happy to see. It gave it, usually when a franchise lasts this long, there's always, you get afraid that something might become stale, right? Even it took a minute down the line in the Rockies, but something happened down the line in the Rockies as well, where you're like, all right, what are we going to switch up here? And they do find some things up. And I think Creed 3 kind of finds something else to switch up by way of tonality, and even some of the new takes and shots that they decide to go with here. Even more importantly, what makes this so dang fresh of a movie is the presence of Jonathan Majors, man. He really came in, did what he had to do. I said it in our immediate reaction, but he puts on a clinic every time, man, and he really does find moments to, again, I think elevate even Michael B. Jordan's performances at times where he needs it, because Jonathan Majors is such a emotional actor, right? And so when he has that emotion, sometimes you got to bring it out of Michael B. Jordan a little bit, but I think he does that, man. Jonathan Majors, tremendous, man. He's a force to be reckoned with. His character here is very different than Kang the Conqueror, who's very different than any of the other things that he's playing right now, and you can feel it. And so I really love what this story became in Creed. It was always about, I think, a black man trying to make it, in a sport, but it's something about the backstory of this movie that's like, it really is an examination of black manhood and what it is to grow up in those weird circumstances, and to have somebody across from you who went through the same things, you know. And I think that's another story for another day and another deep dive. But I love that about the film. My only nitpicks with the film, I don't feel like we got to the end the way I would have liked. I feel like we didn't completely earn the last fight of the film. I wish something else happened. I don't know what it is. I'm not here to be like this should have happened, but I feel like something was a little missing when we got to that last fight. I wish they could have raised the stakes a little bit or made me feel like we should be here already. And for some reason, I just didn't feel like that. But other than that, man, I absolutely love this film. And I'm proud of both Jonathan Majors and Michael B. Jordan for coming out swinging on a movie like this.
So the Rocky franchise is truly one of my favorite film franchises ever. I really grew up on those films for so much of my young life. I rewatched them endlessly. And those are movies that I still revisit to this day that always just rile up so many emotions within me because it's served as probably one of the most inspirational stories that we've ever seen in film. And Rocky is also one of those franchises, and now Creed alongside with that, where there is clearly a formula that they revisit every single time in each of these movies, but it's the rare case where I think formula actually works in the favor of what they're doing here. And that's a rarity in Hollywood. Too often we see movies and franchises that go on for 2, 3, 4, 5 films, so on and so forth, and they rely on the same formula. They don't switch things up, and we see that comes back to bite them in the ass. But the Rocky franchise, there are certain hallmarks that I come to expect out of a Rocky or Creed movie that I'm totally in for every single time. I want to see training montages. I want to hear the music. I want to see an inspirational story. I want to see how the in-ring career also impacts the out-of-ring career and the personal lives of the heroes involved in the story. And Creed 3 absolutely keeps all of those elements. And then you bring in Michael B. Jordan, who has had a really, really long career in Hollywood, has been acting since he was a young kid. I rewatched The Sopranos at the end of last year. The guy shows up in The Sopranos. That's like one of his first TV acting credits ever. It's crazy how long he's been doing this. And he's also been fortunate enough to be surrounded by some of the most talented, prominent names in Hollywood. You mentioned Sylvester Stallone. He also just did a movie with Denzel Washington. He's acted alongside people like Bradley Cooper. He's been, sort of waiting in the wings for an opportunity to take the mantle and to take everything that he's learned over the course of his career and really apply it in a new way that challenges him, not only as an actor, but also now as a director. And I think that with Creed 3, this is damn near the best case scenario you could get for somebody coming in as a first time director, taking on a project that really is massive, that is not only having really huge expectations when you talk about the stories and the performances as it relates to this movie, but also just the lineage and the history of this franchise. People come to know and expect certain things out of a Rocky or Creed movie. And you're following it up behind Ryan Coogler, who brought this back and created what I would say is an instant classic with the first Creed. And then Creed 2 was also really solid film. And I'm just super impressed with how much I really enjoyed this movie overall. I think that there are so many elements about it that I just didn't expect to get out of this movie that really pleasantly surprised me. One being this element of Adonis Creed, the main character. Now him stepping out of the shadow of Rocky Balboa and of course Sylvester Stallone is one of the stars of this franchise, and really just taking center stage to have this story focus on him. We get to see his life after boxing. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that when we see him at the top of this movie, he's transitioning out of boxing, and we see him really focus on his family, and we see him become a father, and we see how much he puts his life and his energy into that and how much of a good father he is. And then you bring in a new character like Jonathan Majors playing this childhood friend named Dame, and you can heighten this element of brotherhood and this exploration of their backstory and the things that they went through, which we don't often see that in film, especially on this scale, where you can just see two young Black youth and what it's like to have this experience growing up, this kinship that they have amongst each other. And then also, how that slowly starts to come back to pull them apart in different ways. And really the wild card of this movie, but its most valuable asset, is Jonathan Majors. And what he brings to this movie is just an energy that we haven't gotten in any of the other Creed movies. Like, yes, I love Creed 1 and Creed 2, but for me, they've yet to have a very personal threat that we can associate with Adonis. Like, yes, Drago's son in Creed 2, that can be somewhat
Hmm.
because of the relationship with the father, Apollo. But I felt
Right.
like that was more of a Rocky Ivan Drago story, really, than
Mm.
story. Creed was
Hmm.
kind of the proxy to fulfill that redemption, that had to take place after what we saw in the events of Rocky 4. But now you have somebody who is very much connected to the upbringing of Adonis in the story, coming in as Jonathan Majors, and he is just incredible in this movie, and he's doing something totally different than what we just saw a few weeks ago in his performance of King the Conqueror in Quantumania. And folks, I would hate to spoil Quantumania for you, but I'm gonna do it. The post-credit scene of Quantumania is really just the trailer for Creed 3. If you haven't seen Quantumania yet, it's just a teaser for this movie, because you really could have taken a Kang variant and said, like, yeah, he's probably just a boxer in another life, because what he does here is just phenomenal. He's a bigger and badder and better villain in Creed 3, honestly, than I think he was in Quantumania. That's not to take anything away from that performance, because he is the best part of Quantumania. But you can
Hmm.
just get so much more dramatic and personal with everything Jonathan Majors is bringing to this movie. And he's emerging is truly a singular talent, a part of this
Hmm.
generation. And I'm just so excited to continue to see what he does over the course of these next few years. The only negatives that I would, sort of have against Creed 3, similar to what you said, the ending of the movie, and it speaks to like a larger issue that I have with the movie. And
Hmm.
I usually don't say this, but I do think that this film could have benefited from more time. I think it could have been longer. The first two
Yeah.
Creed movies, Creed 1 is like 133 minutes, Creed 2 is like 130 minutes. This is a shade under 2 hours. I feel like the pacing in certain moments felt a little rushed to me. Some
Yeah.
of the moments, especially towards the final act, when you're getting the training montage and you're getting the final fight between the two main characters. I don't think that's a spoiler. It's obvious they have to fight at the end, but it felt a little bit rushed. As much as I was enjoying it, I'm like, I want to live in this moment for a little bit longer. So I think that the
Hmm.
movie could have benefited from just taking its time a little bit more. Maybe that's just something Michael B. Jordan still has to really figure out in his next movies, whatever they might be that he directs. But the pacing, I think we could have slowed down, not make the final fight feel so anticlimactic, because it kind of did once it,
Hmm.
and just let it breathe. I think that opportunity to let things breathe has been a hallmark of previous Rocky and or Creed movies. And the only other criticism that I honestly have, and it's significant for me if I'm being honest, they didn't play the damn song. They didn't play Gonna Fly Now, the Rocky theme that we know. It's one of the most iconic and famous themes in movie
Yeah.
history. And Jesus, anytime I hear it, I want to get up and fucking fight instantly. I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to get it
Yeah.
cracking. It's just that it's that rousing of an emotional, just masterful piece of music. And they didn't use it here, maybe because of the absence of Sylvester Stallone, because that theme is so associated with this character. But still,
Hmm.
I feel like that theme is just so ingrained into the DNA of all these movies, regardless of who the character is. And I just felt like in the final fight, or maybe even in the final scene of the movie, like right before we get the credits, I'm thinking like, okay, we're gonna hear now. I'm ready to fucking bawl and cry, because every time I hear that
Yeah.
music, like, I'm getting emotional. And then
Hmm.
they didn't play it, and I was like, oh, that's a letdown. But that's really just nitpicking. It's a minor criticism. It does not ruin the experience of the movie by any means. It's still a really, really enjoyable, entertaining movie. Now, there is no surprise now that there's going to be more of these, because the opening weekend box office of this movie succeeded all expectations. It's the biggest opening for a sports movie ever, exceeded $100 million globally at the box
Sheesh.
office, had nearly a $59 million domestic opening weekend, the highest of any Rocky or Creed movie ever. And you couple that with the fact that Sly is not a part of it. So clearly, that was not a detriment to the success of what this movie was going to be.
Hmm.
I want to ask you about sort of a couple of things as it relates to that. What do you think the success of this movie could be attributed to? Also, with this being Michael B. Jordan's like directorial debut, to come out of the gate so successful with the character that I think will now be like associated as the defining role for him as an actor, I feel like that this
Yes.
is just going to be associated with him for the rest of his life, even more so than Killmonger, right? I think that
Hmm.
this is going to be like his defining role. What do you think that this ultimately means for what they do with Creed in the future? The success of this movie, the fact that Sly is not a part of it and maybe might not return. There's a lot of like controversy behind the scenes about the rights and spinoffs and all this stuff. I just want to kind of get you to paint a picture of what you just foresee for the next iterations of these movies or spinoffs or whatever may come in the future.
Yeah. With the success of this film, I think you can attribute it to so many things. One, people love Rocky. People have always loved that franchise. Two, Creed 1 and 2 have established their own franchise, and they were good. and people did go out to see those movies, which is why we even get the third one. It makes sense, I think, why people pulled up to this film. 3, we are not only in the season of Michael B. Jordan, we're in the season of Jonathan Majors. They're in the same movie together while they're both hot. Absolutely, people are going to pull up to see that. 4, people like boxing movies, not just Rocky, not just Creed. People just like boxing movies, I think, in general. And I think if you add a lot of those things together, you really do get, I think, a pool of people who just want to go see Creed. I think there's so many reasons for people to want to do that. Especially, you said that there hasn't been sports movies at the top like Creed has been in recent years. You know what I mean? There hasn't been a movie, at least that I've been excited about. I'm like, dang, I can't wait till that movie comes out. I got to go see that. It's something about Creed, man. It's something about boxing. It's something about the stories that you can tell in boxing stories that it's just, it just has a different feel when it comes to things that we want to go see in the theater. And you add the tagline, Michael B. Jordan's first directorial debut. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know. There's so many things I think you can attribute to the success of this film, man. Even with, Sylvester Stallone kind of out the picture. Again, you've established 2 movies where, of course, he was part of them, but he was not the movie. Sure, yeah, I think part of the reason the first one is so great is because the mix between his story and Creed's story and Adonis's story in the movie. But I think he established the character enough of Adonis Creed to live on his own. And I think this proves it again, because they even tie it up a little bit with having Jonathan Majors as a presence. You know what I mean? They're like, okay, let's get somebody else that we can bring in and also focus on. I think they do a tremendous job at making that decision to have him there in that way. What the legs of this movie, man. No spoilers, but again, what they just showed us at the end of the film was, look, guys, this is what we are going to do. There will be more of these movies, and there will absolutely be more to come. And I think I'm excited to explore where they're going with it. I think I don't know when a Creed 4 rolls around. I don't know where Michael B. Jordan's next director project lives, but I would, Creed 4 can't be too far away. After the success of this film, after what we know what happens in the movie, it can't be too far. I think that this will be a franchise. To be honest, I would actually love if they just stopped at like 5. After a while, you're like, just make as many Rockies. You know what I mean? Making me Creed as you did Rockies. I think that'd be cool to say there's 5 Rockies and 5 Creeds. That's just a cool idea to me in my mind. But man, I think is wherever the box office takes it, wherever the stories take us, if it continues to be a story that can get us in, that can be riveting, that we can enjoy, that's all that matters, man. And I think this franchise will, I think, end in the right place. So we'll have to see.
So a couple things to build on what you just said. This is notably also the first sports film, according to the producers, Michael B. Jordan, this is the first sports film to have sequences within the film shot in IMAX. And so that undoubtedly helped the box office because you get to put this movie where sports movies traditionally don't live in these premium large formats. You get to put this movie in giant IMAX screens where tickets are going to be pricier. And if you fill up those auditoriums, that's just going to inflate the box office even more. And that was a genius, brilliant move for Michael B. Jordan as a director to have that ambition to want to direct these things in IMAX, these certain boxing sequences, which, by the way, again, to your point, looked incredible. There were some creative choices here that were amazing and were extremely immersive. It felt like you were in the middle of the boxing ring watching this stuff unfold, and the use of slow-mo in addition to the sped up, sort of fast motion that was implemented there. Great stuff. Cannot forget that recently in the past couple of years, Amazon purchased MGM, who are the distributors of this franchise. And so the synergy that exists between those companies is something that cannot be underestimated. I definitely, in the lead up to this movie, will get on Amazon a couple of times, and there are huge Creed 3 banners plastered right on the homepage of the website. I mean, that's exposure that really can't be bought. Everybody uses Amazon at some point. Also, this movie did get delayed until March. It was initially supposed to come out in November. I think the move to March certainly was a benefit because if it came out in November, it would have been almost in direct competition with Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which Michael B. Jordan doesn't want that. He's in that movie. Ryan Coogler is a producer on this movie and also directed Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Would have just been a conflict of interest and a much smarter decision to keep it, in March as opposed to coming out in November. And also there were a lot of really well-placed teasers and trailers for this movie. I think that the marketing was incredibly effective. They had Super Bowl spots. There were really, really good trailers. Like every trailer that they put out was actually was great. It told you what the movie was about. You didn't have to play the guessing game, like where they were going to go. They didn't try to misdirect you and make you think, oh, yeah, Sylvester Stallone is going to pop up. Like, no, this was always going to be a standalone edition. And so I think people showed up exactly what they got. And lastly, it's sort of an intangible, but it's right there on the 50-foot screen when you go to see this movie. The intangible of Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors being absolutely fucking swole the entire movie. Who doesn't want to see that? Women want to see that, obviously. And men be like, damn, yo, I got to get back into the gym immediately because they are going crazy in this movie. Like Jonathan Majors, what he had to do, the physical transformation, it's unreal what he had to go through. And I was just looking at it really just in awe because these two were just like specimens. The work that they put in to craft and hone their bodies to get to the shape that they have to get to, it's really awe-inspiring to see that. You don't see that often. And the fact that it's like these two Black leading men, Michael B. Jordan already super established and Jonathan Majors is on a career ascendancy happening at the same time. Like this is like two people at the peak of their powers. Exactly. I saw somebody online compared to the fact that like these two want to work together like Pacino and De Niro did, even though those two only made like 4 or 5 movies together, but I get the idea. I get the comparison. Like they want to be frequent collaborators and they are both just like firing on all cylinders. So there's just a lot to look forward to with this franchise. What comes next, bring it on. I guess, we're doing universes. Michael B. Jordan is now talking about the Creed verse. I wish we would maybe stop using terminology like that, but I get the idea. I get the idea. Like, let's make more of these. Yes. But there was talks of a Drago spinoff. That's kind of what pissed off Sly Stallone to begin with, like a few months ago, like a Drago spinoff. There's other things, as you alluded to, that happen within this movie that can be more. I want to see Jonathan Majors come back and do something else. It might be in a Creed movie. Maybe it's something separately. I don't know. I want to see him come back. I think that there's definitely ways to continue to build upon this, but this movie's success, it's going to be the highest grossing Creed or Rocky movie probably ever. And so I think that just means plenty of dollar signs for Amazon and MGM. So we'll have to stick by and see the future of what the Creed franchise will hold. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on Creed 3. If you've checked out the movie this past weekend, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.